Good morning, all of you. We welcome each one of you to the second day of the 3rd International Conference 2017, hosted by Xavier School of Communications, Xavier University, Bhubaneswar, in collaboration with Tata Steel, South Indian Bank, Volvo India, Jindal Stainless Limited, Coca-Cola, and media partner, the New Indian Express.
Our keynote speaker of the day, Dr. Sharon Wilson, will present a paper titled Mobile Learning and Interactivity in a Virtual Space. Her address will tell us how virtual learning through collaborative, social, and personal platforms enhances not only teaching and learning in the classroom, but also encourages continuous learning beyond the classroom. Dr. Sharon Wilson has worked in various media industries, including public relations, broadcasting, and journalism. Her stint as a visiting scholar in the United States has enabled her to include borderless teaching methods, including virtual globalized learning, where students interact with other students, professors, and media practitioners from around the world while incorporating media in student learning components.
Her extensive media and government relations has enriched the way research and teaching is being conducted. Her current research includes media and crime, that includes gangs and terrorism, journalism practices, that includes ethics, decision-making, social media, and women. Please join us in welcoming Dr. Sharon onto the stage.
Okay, good morning everybody. I'll say in Malaysia, we would say Selamat Sejahtera or good morning. I guess I would say Namaste, Vanakkam, and hello to everybody. Before I start, I'm going to do some shameless advertising. And when I say shameless advertising, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my university to give you an idea of where I come from. I come from University Tunku Abdul Rahman. It's a non-profit university, and we are 15 years old. We're still a teenager. And it's a private university providing quality education, and this is where the university that actually has I could have a farmer's son sitting in the same room as a millionaire's daughter. The reason for that, and the reason why I say that, is because the university does not discriminate against race, religion, culture, age, and so on. And this is owned by a private entity and with association with the government. And in the beginning, when we started in June 2002, and this is the same time I joined the university, we only had one city campus in Kuala Lumpur with 3 faculties, 8 programs, and only 411 students. That was all. Ever since then, we've graduated over 50,000 students since our first graduation convocation in 2005. Today, as of today, we have 110 programs, more than 30,000 students, 9 faculties, 3 institutions, 3 centers, and 2 campuses. We not only teach and in Kuala Lumpur, which I teach at Kuala Lumpur, there is also a main campus, which is in a northern region, which is 4 hours away from Kuala Lumpur. And as you can see, these are some of the faculties that we have and institutes. So with that said, I'll show you a little picture there of the main campus in the little town I said, Kampa. It's surrounded by lakes, and it's a very picturesque town. In fact, it has become a student town, taking over all the residences. And that on the right is the Kuala Lumpur campus where I belong. You can see very structural and very, well, in a way, a little modern and very brick and mortar in manner. With that said, I also want to tell you that I'm an advocate of technology and teaching in my university, and the beautiful MCs have I'll tell you in a while what that means. But before that, every time I enter a class, the first things I ask my students is, what do you use? What technology do you use? Do you use Twitter? Do you use Facebook? And then they tell me, oh, you know, I use Snapchat. So that was one semester that was very popular. And so I learned how to use Snapchat. And then they tell me, oh, you know, I like Instagram. That's where we post. So it became very trendy one semester that everybody was using Instagram. I taught myself to use Instagram. Of course, I was on Instagram, but there were a lot of nitty-gritty things that I needed to learn. And one semester, there was a trend in the university where all students were catching Pokemons. Is that a trend here as well? Okay. So I don't know what it is. Probably all the kids know what it is, but I had to teach myself what it was. And, you know, in the beginning, all the students during their breaks would go out looking for this little creature. I was saying, what are they doing? You know, what are they chasing? And so I took the trouble to do the same. And one semester, I was teaching video game students. I have no clue how to play games on this new platform. And I told a student, can you teach me how to play a video game? And today, I can proudly say I know what Call of Duty is and what Grand Theft Auto is. Now, why do I say that? I'm not doing some advertising, or, you know, I'm not being proud as a peacock, but that's exactly what academics need to do. You need to keep up, not just keeping up with technology, but you have to keep up with your students. You no longer can teach your students like when your lecturers taught you in the 1960s and 70s. It will not work. And I say that very strongly because as I enter my classrooms today, half the students are on their phones. So when I tell my students, can you listen to me while I give this lecture, half of them are online. And I said, look here, I won't talk to you. I'll send you a message to keep your eyes glued to my slides. And so I have to send them Facebook messages or Insta Messenger and things like that, because times have changed. The way I call a student into my office to do a consultation with them no longer works. They want to do something called Facebook Live or Instagram Live, or they want to see my life on Snapchat. So with that, this is our students, well, part of our students in the monitor is missing. So these are our students on the first day, some of them anyways, and then these are our classrooms with our students there, and then you see them using the computers and whatnot. Okay, so now we move on to what I've been using so far. So I teach a subject, a couple of subjects actually. I teach one of them being media theory. And so in media theory, so I go on board and I start a group and I ask them questions like, how's everyone doing? You know, do you have any problems? And things like that, apart from uploading my notes or uploading an article and things like that. For instance, and then I teach also media relations here. So then you have students who also share articles and share readings for the day. Okay, so these are all the comments given by students based on the article that was uploaded by another student. So you see that there is this interaction going on, and it allows students to express themselves, and it allows students to read the article and relate it to my lectures. That's me, if you didn't know. That's for my class in May 2017, I taught a class called Intro to Journalism. And so I did a Facebook Live where students could comment, and these are some of the comments that came with while a Facebook Live was going on, and I did it in the comforts of my home at night. The setback of doing Facebook is that you can do it anytime. And my Facebook Live sometimes go on at 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning when my students are wide awake and when I am falling asleep. But it is something that, again, like I said, it is something that we need to incorporate into our lives as educators. Then I did Instagram for Introduction to Journalism. This is only for my students, for the class. And so students will have to, follow, of course, and then they will have to, because it's part of their assignments, they take pictures and they, caption the pictures with hashtags and whatever else. This particular subject is for Year 1 students. Now, the most challenging thing that I've done so far, which I'm going to do this year, next year in October, is a collaborative study with the University of Delaware, United States. Now, what's going to happen is we are going to do a video conference. We've done it before with a colleague of mine, and this in 2018, in October, I will be leading this lecture. It's a 7-week program where we will be video conferencing students in a class on this subject called intercultural communications. And so this is a previous class that we did. So it's video conferencing, so which means that the lecturer in Utah would be giving a lecture together with our students in Malaysia, with students in America. So this is something that we have done and we will be doing, and we continue it in October next year. Another study, this is what it means by virtual learning globally. Another study that I conducted was with University of Honduras. Honduras is in Latin America, and we Skype sessions with the students in University of Honduras, and that had proven to be very, very successful. So, let's come down to what I'm currently doing. The current research is titled, tongue-in-cheek, WhatsApp. Technically it says WhatsApp with my students, yeah? So WhatsApp with my students, mobile learning and interactivity in a virtual space. So I've done Facebook, we've covered Instagram, we've covered Facebook Live, we've done the video conferencing, we've done Skype, now we go on to the mobiles. So things have changed, as you can see in my classroom, where it's no longer the four walls. These walls are broken down. The walls are brick. What we are looking at is the virtual space that is, well, in some ways you can say there's no space. And so the whiteboard, well, you know, the green board, as we say, is no longer the green board, it's moved to the whiteboard, and then it became electronic board. Now it's borderless. And we are using the mobile phones to communicate with our students. This thing we call social networking. And I'm going to give you some, being an academic, it's only proper that I give you some literature review. And I'm going to talk about mobile technologies and the literature review for that, and the virtual learning and some literature on that. And then we're going to go into the methodology of how I've done this. And of course, some findings, and so on and so forth. Okay, so before that, let me give you a preview. Now, the backbone of the whole idea is the fact that the Malaysian government generally is very supportive of IT and teaching, IT in education. And so in the year 2000, as part of the Malaysian government's efforts to advocate ICT into the curriculum, and school systems, so they introduced ICT tools, for instance, Google and so on and so forth. And then they came up and said, look, institutions of higher learning, you also have to integrate technology into your system. And so that was what we did. Now, in Malaysia currently, we have something called the Education Revolution 4.0, which is a convergence. And this word convergence came about a long time ago, but then right now this convergence incorporates mobile technologies as well. And in universities in Malaysia, they are currently talking about creating flexi space, a module whereby students can design their own courses according to their own capabilities. I'm sure you'd enjoy that, students, if you're here. Creating your own classes. How fun would that be? Yeah? Casual lean classroom concepts and online trial courses for students in order to help future students find their course that best suits them. So, you know, as an academic, we have this whole OBE system where we actually tell educators, you know, right now you've got to break down your student into key components. Are they good students? Are they bad students? We no longer look at that. We look at where does their skills lie in. Are they strong in public speaking? Are they strong in their skills in technology? Are they strong in perhaps writing? Are they strong in networking? So we're going to break it down further. And that's going to be very tough on us academics because we now know precisely which student has which weaknesses and which strengths. That will eventually identify the students into which sort of industries they are going to. So we as academics would probably know whether you are cut out to be in front of the camera if you're broadcasting students or behind the camera. Now, some important material, some important literature that's being introduced, it's Malaysia and elsewhere. Some of the studies done on social networking and learning environments include Hazari, North and Moreland, where they looked at college faculty in increasing using social media to support teaching and learning. Rosen and Nelson, They looked at e-portfolios, which have become an important authentic assessment tool in higher education. McLaughlin and Lee, who looks at the signal, the need for pedagogies that are more personal, social, and participatory. So what is this E in e-learning? You put E in everything, e-learning, e-payment, e-banking, e-whatever. So what is this E in learning actually? So what we do in Malaysia is that we as a faculty have taken efforts to, and also in various countries, to create new creative teaching ways. I'm sure as students and as academics, you've been students before too. And so sometimes we forget, you know, academics, we forget that we were students before because we are so engrossed in our academic lives. So as students, you have to be empathetic to the needs of the students as well. So you have this emerging trend or constructs such as e-learning 2.0, pedagogy 2.0, student 2.0. Of course, now it's changed to 4.0. Everything is 4.0 now. And all these studies, all these 2.0s and 4.0s, what they've done is they have created openness. They've learned about openness. They've learned about personalization. Like when I said, you know, I'm using Facebook Live and I get private messages while I'm chatting with them about the lessons. They ask me if I'm okay, if I've had my dinner, you know, if my son's in bed, and things like that. So it's become very personalized. And then you have collaborative or collaborations, where I mentioned to you earlier that have had collaborations with different universities, like Honduras, for example. And then it creates that social presence. Remember that when we are using any one of these technologies, we are leaving digital footprints. These digital footprints, no matter where you delete it or remove something, it is there. And it will always be there. So if you're going to use technology in your classrooms, remember that you're leaving digital footprints for your students to follow. So you have this thing called, and I like the term, collective wisdom, where you are in some ways learning alongside your teachers and your classmates. Okay? Now, when we look at interactivity in the classroom, okay, we are looking at the open learning environment that encourages interactivity. We are looking at interactivity which occurs when students are able to actively participate and provide feedback and receive prompt responses from their teachers and friends. I know it's a challenge, and I know a lot of academics are going to ask me that. What happens, you know, I want to be asleep on my weekends. I don't want to look at my technology. I know yesterday Mr. Krishna Prasad said he switches off his handphone on a Sunday. He doesn't communicate with anybody and whatever else. I cannot afford to do that as an academic. Me and my students have made a commitment in the beginning of the semester that we will be in this together. And so on a Sunday, or maybe on a Saturday, at 2 in the morning, if my phone dings or pings, or whatever you call it, I answer, wherever I am. Even if I am in a food stall, having my dinner, I still say hi. Can I speak to you later, even if I have to say that? But I do respond. Because I don't know what my students are going through. Some students probably are doing their revisions at that time. And they need just one answer, yes or no. Can I do this or not? And it's most times on Instagram, Facebook, Insta Messenger, for instance. All I have to say is yes or no. And the next day I get a beautiful assignment delivered to my office, for example. Of course, there are times where students, and I can tell, ask maybe ridiculous questions that have been said many, many times in the classrooms, and my students know my style. I will not answer the question. And when I don't answer the question, they know I've answered it before. They've just not listened. So the idea here is, and I know some academics are going to be very against me because, you know, in many ways they can say, oh, does it mean that I have to do the same thing? No, you don't have to. It's just what I do. You don't have to. But what I'm trying to say is, you have to set those boundaries with your students. If you say, I won't communicate with you on a Saturday or Sunday, fine. I will communicate with you between 9 to 5, fine. It's just me, you know. I just like social media. And I like sometimes, like yesterday we had such a lovely entertainment program, and I Facebook Live for my students to actually watch it. And a lot of them responded with messages saying that it was great and it's nice to see communication students and in a different country and things like that. Of course, as what Dobson and Mitchell says, time constraints make it difficult for lecturers to encourage students for feedback. Of course. In the beginning, if you have not, as academics, if you have not used technology in your classrooms, it is going to be tough. The reason I say that is because, one, it is very time consuming, very time consuming. Especially if you're using various platforms and you've never used them before, or you've never incorporated into your life, then it's going to be very tough. But the second thing is, of course, for students. As academics, you want students to respond. And one of the worst things that can happen for an academic is when students don't respond. Academics will empathize with that comment. And so, when in a classroom, when students don't respond, you get to see them face to face and you get to reprimand them. But when you do not see them face to face, how do you then rectify the situation? How do you solve this problem? So, like what my dear friend Mr. Sabellino said yesterday, you have to clickbait them. You've got to persuade them in some ways, possibly giving them marks. And we'll talk about that because we have students here, we don't want to give it away. If you're an academic and you want to know about this grading and marking and all the intricacies, we will talk later. So, then we move on. So I've given you a brief overview about technology in the classrooms and all the lit review and whatever else. Now let's go into mobile technology. So what is the Malaysian scenario? And it's very staggering, I should say, that Malaysians are the world's largest users of WhatsApp. Largest user. Everybody has a WhatsApp. If you have a mobile phone, you have a WhatsApp. Some of them have 2 WhatsApp because they have 2 numbers and 2 phones. Okay. 58%, of course, Facebook, I'm not going to read the numbers here. Facebook and YouTube are also popular, and we have other things like WeChat. Like I said, you know, people use Tumblr, people use Snapchat, and whatever has come out of other countries, we use them. Now, the numbers have changed. I want to also correct what I mentioned to Dr. Jolly just now. The total population as of February 2016, this is the total population. And if you look right at the bottom, the mobile penetration rate for Malaysia is 144%. So, which technically means everybody has a handphone. It's scary, you know. So when you come into our classrooms, everybody's on their phone. So a lot of times, or rather sometimes, when I enter the classroom, so I've got to, you know, get their attention and say, excuse me, I'm here. Maybe you should do some neck exercises, you know, from down to up, you know, something like that. So that's how staggering it is. If you're flying into Malaysia, once you land in Malaysia, you will notice everybody is, even the guys in the immigrations and customs. So, this is another staggering thing. We are internet addicts. Okay, they spend 5.1 hours a day on average, yeah? On average, a day on the internet. 2.8 hours a day on social networks. And 47% of Malaysians access websites from their mobile phones. I'm probably one of them too. Mobile activities, using social media apps, watching videos, you know, playing online games, that's popular amongst my male students. Location-based search, I do that a lot because I'm always, you know, finding a place. Of course, online banking if you're older. And then, here we go. So, WhatsApp is the second top social platform. So, as I said, and I'm reiterating, I've done Facebook, Instagram, whatever else. So it was only right that at the moment, I tend to now focus my attention to WhatsApp. Okay, so top time spent in Messenger app, there you have it, 81%. So that's a lot of time. Huh? And we have hundreds of groups. And, when I landed at the airport, because we did not have this Wi-Fi, I think the first question everybody asks is, what's the Wi-Fi? Previously, when you go into a home, you say, how are you today? You know, have you eaten? Or, you know, are you good? But most times when we enter a home today, the first things they ask is, do you have Wi-Fi? And well, we are to be blamed also. First thing we did when we entered the university, do you have Wi-Fi? And it's, everybody's gloomy or, disappointed or agitated or, I don't know about aggression, but all these things fly away when it says, ding, you are now connected on Xavier University. And then you see all these pinging coming on because all these, and my phone is constantly mute because if I were to switch it on, and I know Mr. Savalino is the same thing because every morning I hear his phone dinging all the time, it would go on and on and on. I have a friend who gets almost 700 to 800 messages, WhatsApp messages, every single day. Every single day. Now, if I shut off my phone for today, I'll probably get about 200. I'm not that popular, you know. So I'll probably get about 200. But how do you answer 700 WhatsApp messages? And I'm going to come to the challenge, when I talk about challenges, of having a large classroom of about 100 to 300 students and having WhatsApp. Let's talk about that later. Okay, so we come to a little bit, so I give you, something for the students, something for the academics. Now we go back to the academics again. So some pertinent literature. So we would call this mobile learning, this new educational paradigm, yeah, and in institutions of social learning. Now just some studies from Malaysian scholars for you, and these Malaysian scholars have done some studies on WhatsApp. And so Jazehan, Ahmad and Wong mentioned the relationship between learners, self-efficacy and readiness towards mobile learning. And their findings were on trainee teachers. And they said that these respondents had high level of personal innovativeness and readiness. While Zoraini, okay, I'll read that. Zoraini, Chung and Norziati, in their study, they mentioned they were looking at to determine the readiness of learners at higher institutions, and they extended the ownership of mobile phones, and they found that readiness to be mobile learners and perceptions about M-learning. We call it M-learning. Okay, so Prensky in 2001 suggests in his research, he had this research titled Digital Natives, Digital Immigrants. Our students are all native speakers, and I don't mean native speakers as in language, but native speakers in terms of technology. Okay? And I'm going to talk about the next generation eventually, and how they are going to be people with digital thumbs. Digital thumbs. Because they will no longer carry pen and paper. Okay? So, today's students who are millennials, yeah, they use computers, video games, digital music players, video cams, cell phones, mobile devices, and a variety of different things. A variety of different things. And they use this, to get so many different things. For instance, it's either related to an event like this, or dates of exams, or messages sent by teachers or among students, and so on and so forth. So this M-learning is known as mobile learning, this new educational technology. Other studies by Malaysian scholars, Isham, Rozan, Azida, and Munira mention how M-learning, they studied the results, they studied the study of exploring the impact of learners' characteristics. And they found that M-learning helped students pace their studies and get information easily, anytime, anywhere. Like I said earlier, I could sit in a food stall and students could send me messages. I am here and students send me messages asking me, how's my trip going? And I respond back by saying, because our students are currently in exams. They've just, they are doing their exams, some of them have finished the exams, and so I've asked them how the exams went, and they are responding and things like that. So, anytime, anywhere. Shiran and Rozuma explored the extent of mobile phone use among students and identified personal and family factors related to the mobile phone, and look at the relationship between problem mobile phone use and psychological health of the students. Psychological health, too obsessive, too addictive, your relationships with other people are jeopardized, you don't talk to others anymore. So it can be quite difficult. Lecturers don't see students anymore in the classroom setting or in the offices for consultation because students prefer to be seen online. Now, this is especially for all the academics. There are so many different studies done, and I'm just giving you a couple of them. In fact, I've got like 6 of them. Very interesting studies by these Western scholars to look at, and I've broken it down by method and findings. Okay, so like for instance, Willems. These are all studies after 2010. They explored experience of undergrad nurses on the use of WhatsApp, and they found that it benefited from learning. The students benefited from that. Barhumi looked at mobile learning activities guided by activity theory, and the study concluded with positive effect on using WhatsApp in a blended course. Lauricella and Kay looked at using text and instant messaging in higher education classrooms. The method, again, was quantitative. The findings showed that the students benefited it in various different ways. and I've broken it down very easily for you based on findings, based on methodology, and of course the objective. Okay, these are some other studies that I've taken it down so you get an idea of the various studies done in the Western landscape. For instance, looking at exploring social networking technologies. That could be descriptive designs of the method could be a descriptive research design. And a lot of times, a lot of these studies look at the various positive outcomes of students using WhatsApp to learn. Okay, and the fact that if you look at the one on the right, Bunig and Deschen mentions mobile instant messaging between teachers and students, and the findings reveal the benefits of using WhatsApp, for instance, and I know you can relate to this. For instance, communicating with students, yes. Creating dialogue and encouraging sharing among students, yes. Using it as a learning platform, perhaps. Simple operation, yes. Low cost, definitely. Immediacy, of course. Accessibility of the learning materials, perhaps. And the continuation of learning beyond class hours, most definitely. So, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? What are we going to talk about? What is my study all about? Now comes, let's get down to work. My study, the objective of it, I explored technology, especially WhatsApp, in how it was used for teaching and learning, and I wanted to look at how it can be used firstly as a teaching tool, secondly as a learning tool for my students. I wanted to explore ways to develop new and interesting learning experiences simultaneously, and I wanted to also, in a very small way, look at the social-cultural aspects that it created. So, the question is always, so? I'm looking at the relationship between technology use and youths in the way they learn. What is my methodology? I used, firstly, it was with postgrad. This is the first time I'm using WhatsApp with a group of students. So I used it with 2 postgraduate classes of a total of 13 communication students. It's a very small number because it's qualitative, so the interview and the textual analysis is very rigorous. And it was half-structured interviews. This interview design was based on the literature review. That's why you notice my lit review is very extensive. And then I also did a textual analysis of the WhatsApp messages where there was a theming. The themes and categories were built from the textual analysis. And this observation also was included where I observed my students' behavior in 2 classes in a span of 1 year, so 2 different semesters. Okay, now what is the findings? There were a couple of themes, basically 3 major themes. Firstly, using and sharing a learning platform, where it was, when I say learning and using and sharing a learning platform, basically it is information pertaining to class structure, the syllabus, the lecture notes, the discussion questions, and all matters pertaining to the classroom. So this was included in the learning platform. And this is the platform that allowed students and lecturers the opportunity to ask and share information, okay, that relates with the class subject. Secondly, to create a dialogue among students. Students are able to create a dialogue with one another, not just with the students and the lecturers, but with the students and other students as well. So this allowed not only the students and other students to socialize, but it also allows the lecturer and the students to socialize. In this platform, students are also able to motivate each other. And if you're a master's student, for instance, sometimes you're quite alone doing your research. And so sometimes you want to give up. And so you need other students, or even the lecturer for that matter, to encourage you. Did you read this? What are you doing now? Which step are you doing? Where are you at? Things like that. And finally, grooming a positive atmosphere. Students feel when they are invited into this WhatsApp group, they have a sense of belonging. They feel needed. My lecturer likes me. My lecturer needs me in this WhatsApp group. She included me. Wow. Because when you add someone, it says you are added, or to this group, and it says, wow, I'm added, me. My lecturer added me to a group and she has my number. It's a very psychological thing, but it works. Okay, then we did a textual analysis. Okay, some of the things, when we talk about collaborative platform, what does it include? Like I said, it includes class structure, syllabus, lecture notes. So some of the quotes pulled out is student A, and I've used, if you read the paper, I've used codes for my students, because sometimes, and when I told them I'm going to use their information on WhatsApp for a paper that I'm doing, and I say, Dr. Sharon, please don't. We say some stupid things sometimes. We don't want everybody around the world to know what we said. Okay, fair enough. So in this case, student A says, unable to obtain information of changes in the class schedule and can discuss this with other classmates of mine. Creating a dialogue. Student A mentioned that she felt she could break the ice with a first encounter on the WhatsApp group and consequently communicate personally and then have a face-to-face. Another student said she mentioned she would use WhatsApp for basic information or discussion, and this would be followed up with a longer dialogue session with her colleague or her lecturer. So student E says, I could out of the blue ask a question and get instantaneous response from one or all of my peers. Examples. So it says, okay, let me read that. Dr. Sharon, what does it mean by existentialism and anti-existentialism on the identity? And he goes on by, asking me lots of things. And then in between, there is a communication with different students. Like for instance, it says, now you know how I feel. And then he, instead of me answering, another student helps out the first student. So here I am coming in and I say, sorry for the late reply, I've been busy. Okay, so I then give to socialize, and they like socializing. So if there are foreign students in a class, then the local students would somehow, not discuss the... when you also have foreign students in your classroom, there are times when messages are in relation to culture, such as music, food, places to visit, and these are also uploaded. So this is my conversation with the student. Student D thought it was a useful form of communication as it helped her keep in contact with classmates outside of the class in a social setting, and in brackets at mamak. Mamak is a Malaysian jargon. I think in here locally, mama would probably be something like a daba, I think, where you go out and eat. Yes, okay. So, where you go out and little stalls and you have your snacks and whatever else, yeah? So we call them a mama, where everybody hangs out. Student H, in a discussion of popular culture for the day, uploaded a video of a modern local hit song and was quoted as saying, "Hey, student J, please see this, I'm sure you're going to like it." And then I uploaded a music video with the quote saying, "J, this is for you." And in response, student J, who is from the Middle East, responded, "Hey, a mix of Malay, Arabic rap song, interesting." And then here I am being an academic saying, via the incorporation of local lyrics into self-imposed rap songs, foreign rap, you know, I have to be academic sometimes, you know. Mr. Sabellino and I had a conversation of how I told him there are times I cannot avoid from being academic. I cannot watch a movie, I cannot listen to music, I can't read books, and I can't be in social settings because I'm constantly thinking as a researcher. And it's very difficult because my family gets very irritated with me when I go and watch a movie because most of them say, "What's going on? This is the theory of symbolic interaction." How can this be? And say, "Oh, please, you know, if you want to go watch a movie on your own." Or when I listen to music, or, you know, when I, for instance, on the very rare occasions that I do play a video game, and I'd say, "Oh, this is, you know, a theory of innovation. You know, how do the youths follow this?" You know, things like that. So the students have given up hope as well. And some of them have been influenced by me to the point when they come and talk to me because I teach communication theory, and they go on and they quote me and they say, "You know, Dr. Sharon, it's spiral of silence." So it's tough, you know, especially when you're so passionate or you love what you do. And then you have the personal platform, yeah? Grooming a positive atmosphere and a sense of belonging, like I said earlier. When students do not want to communicate with the lecturer in a WhatsApp group, they send a personal WhatsApp message to the lecturer, and most times it's a personal query. They don't want the group to know about it, for instance. For instance, they're asking me for a deadline extension, or they're telling me I can't come to class because I'm working, because these are adults, for instance. Okay, so one example, student D mentioned, if I connected with my classmate about a question they posted in the WhatsApp group, I could also WhatsApp them personally to continue a discussion if I felt I may be spamming the group. Since I had their contact in the WhatsApp group, it felt less awkward than asking for their number in class. They wouldn't go up to the person and say, "Hey, can I have your number?" So, being on a WhatsApp group makes it so much easier. Maybe for other reasons also. Okay, student A mentions that the WhatsApp group can create positive or negative environment depending on how the user sees it. A person could most likely to take it as a casual conversation if she or he is distracted or refuse to continue the discussion. Some examples here. So you will notice in the bottom, as the discussion goes on, we were talking about the licensing and things like that of the media, and the person ends by saying, "Sorry to have disturbed your weekend, take care." And I respond, "Hi Abe," whatever. Okay, so the next one is, "Good morning everyone. I will be presenting a brand new topic, popular culture. Can have a read on this article," so articles are attached. Okay, Angel, thanks. Angel's, of course, not her real name. Thank you. And then I respond, you know, I just left because I had a major meeting that day in the ministry, and so I responded. Okay, so this is by a Middle Eastern student. So he goes on to give an overview of, because we were talking about rap music in Malaysia versus the one in the Middle East. And so he goes on to talk about the situation in the country. And then another student responds. So this discussion going on a more casual platform. So this WhatsApp group was more like a hangout where everybody, it's like, you know, you could wear your you know, home pajamas or home clothes and sit down anywhere in an awkward position, and you could be lying on your bed and having a discussion in your WhatsApp about something very serious. Now, the theory that I applied, of course, you know, there's always theories. It's the social constructivist theory, and this was also mentioned in some of my esteemed colleagues' presentations yesterday, where it talks about how to improve social interactions between students and to construct and share knowledge, okay, and the fact that it allows students to construct their own knowledge. Two things that I want to also remind you, that it's not just construction of knowledge, but when you're on a WhatsApp group, it's also the construction of identity. Who you are, who I am, for instance. It breaks down the divide between lecturer and student. That is why I'm saying it's a challenge, because when you start, if you haven't started, when you start with a group, any sort of group for that matter, not just WhatsApp, there is a challenge because students may not know how to respond to you. They feel that you have invaded their space. Because this social platform, this Facebook, this Instagram, they feel, and I mean students feel, that it's exclusively their own space, as is my Facebook. So I have two Facebook groups, or rather two Facebook pages. One is my personal Facebook page, and one that's dedicated solely to my students. I don't include parents, I don't include other lecturers, I don't include any other adults. It's just me and a whole bunch of my students. Every semester it gets added on. I think on that particular Facebook page there's about 3,000 students. Exclusively for my students. So they can say whatever they want, they can put up whatever pictures and so on and so forth. I don't say anything because it's their personal space. So likewise with Instagram, I do the same thing. I have two various ones. One is my private one and one is my teaching, academic Instagram. So it's that sense of personal space that the students want to protect. And it takes time and it takes trust to get into that personal space. What more if you're using a mobile device, and this number is very much a personal space. You don't give out your phone numbers easily. And then what more, your lecturer wants your number because he wants to WhatsApp you. And for instance, if you're not in class, she or he may ask you, where are you now? Why are you late? Why are you absent? I'm sure you don't want that. So there is this invasion of personal space, but that's the negative part of it, one. Secondly, the fact that, like I said earlier, and I keep stressing on this, it's time consuming. It's very time consuming. I've done this with a group of 13 students. I think I will not be able to do this with a classroom of 150. Unless I teach only one subject and one subject alone. And as academics, you know, you don't teach one subject alone. You teach a variety of subjects. You've got research to do. And so, when you have a class of 150, how do you keep track? How do you keep track of all these students? And you know, in WhatsApp, you can change your names. Okay, so it could be Sharon Wilson today and Bugs Bunny tomorrow. Right? So I could change my name and I can't keep track. Who is this Bugs Bunny? Oh, it's me. You know what I mean? So that could be a challenge as well. The operating hours, oh my Lord, I tell you, it can go on to 2. If I'm awake at 5, you know, 5 o'clock in the morning for some reason or other, then I'm also messaging somebody. And somebody somewhere in those 3,000 students that I have on my Facebook would respond, aren't you sleeping? Asking me. And I say, no, I'm awake. I'm seeing if any of my students are awake too and would like, you know, what's going on, or something like that. So this is very interesting, the time that is required. So you need to set these boundaries, okay? So in this case, in this study, the lecturer sometimes answered WhatsApp messages after many hours. So you will notice there, you know, because like I said, there is no particular time. They could ask me a question at 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning, and I may not or may not respond because the internet connection may not be stable, or the lecturer is unavailable to answer that, to respond. And you also have to include other tools to help students, not just WhatsApp messages all the time. As you notice, it could be a link to a YouTube video, or it could be an audio, because you know WhatsApp, you can record messages as well. And you know, you have to include articles. So there are other technologies that you're incorporated into this one mobile device application. Okay, so at the end of the study, we found, or rather I found, that there was a positive effect on the students. The students could not just study in the classroom, but the discussion could spill over outside the classroom. So the virtual space, the classroom is no longer a space, a physical space. It's now virtual space that the spilling over of learning takes place. It's no longer, if your class is from 8 to 10, it's 8 to 10. It could be longer than that. See, that's the problem when you give short time for academics, you know. We can speak for 3 hours straight. Never mind, I'm at the end. Thank you very much. Okay, now the interesting part. Now I'm putting this here not to remind you of your age, but I'm putting this here to tell you where you are and where we are heading to before I end. Just 1 second. You may do your calculation in your head. How old am I this year? And you know, if you're an academic, like I said, I'm sorry, I'm not reminding you of your age. Okay? So the millennials are sitting amongst us. A lot of academics are in Gen X. Some may be baby boomers. Okay? This is the next gen. The alphas. This is who you prepare for. Where these are students, like I said, future students, which with digital thumbs. These are going to be digital natives. These are students who wouldn't know what a paper and pen. What do you need? How do you use a paper and pen would be the question they ask. As academics and future academics perhaps, you need to be prepared. You need to step up your game, because in future they would not know whether they need to slide their finger on paper. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, that social media, be it Facebook, Instagram, or WhatsApp, is a shift from the auditory and visual to the kinesthetic process. The platform may stay the same, but it's gone from a computer with a keyboard to one with a touch screen. And that touch screen needs to be expanded from the four walls of the classroom to outside the classroom. I'm going to end here, and I'm going to end with a very famous saying, and I'm sure you all are familiar with it. You must feel the force around you, and that force is the force of social media, and you must use it to the best of your ability if you want the current millennials to be at par, if you want them to go out there and perform. We have to step it up as academics. So with that, I'm humbled. I thank you for your graciousness in listening to me in this morning, and also to the university for having me all the way here. Really, you are amazing. I'm glad to be a part of this. Again, I'm humbled. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Important to be on WhatsApp and be at reach of your students, but how do you restrict your students from spamming in the groups? Because these days what's happening is spamming in the groups, and there are students, like selected students from the class, who are like messengers of the teachers. Teachers will send a message to the student, and that students will post in the group. So this is how is going on. How do you restrict your students from spamming in the group?
Okay, a lot of times this, if it's a WhatsApp group, for instance, if it's a small group with small numbers of students, like I have 13, for instance, then we have, the first week of class, we have certain restrictions, or we have ground rules. So we tell them, you know, what you, basically, you can say whatever you want, it must be related to the class and things like that. No spamming, we tell them very clearly. You know, because sometimes you could have happy birthday and repeatedly, you know, all these things. So if that happens, then I would come in and respond by reminding them, stop spamming and things like that. But I believe it will be very difficult if it is a very large class. Because if it's a class above, probably above 30, then, you know, you're going to have difficulty administrating it, because some of them may not listen. So you must have very strict rules early on of what you can and cannot do. Just like, you know, in some Facebook or Instagram or whatever, there's cans and cannots. What you can say or cannot say, what you can do and cannot do. It's not so much the content that I control, because I allow the students to discuss. It's very much like this unnecessary chatter, you know, that comes on. Thank you for the question.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Thank you for your PPT, as my topic is quite related to you. So I wanted to ask two questions. In introduction, you used a term suffix 2.0. Okay, I understood that e-learning 2.0 and pedagogy 2.0, but I didn't understand that suffix 2.0.
Okay.
And second question is, I've heard about semi-structured interview, but you have mentioned half-structured interview, I think.
Okay.
So,
well, semi-structured, half-structured, almost the same thing. There's not much difference. It's just a terminology I would use. It's fine. That's okay. The first one, the suffix 2.0, basically it's whatever that you add on to a 2.0. Whatever. It could be Xavier 2.0. Sabellino 2.0. So it's whatever that adds on to a 2.0. But I want to remind you, it's no longer 2.0, it's 4.0. So yeah, that has changed. Thank you.
Yeah, ma'am. So how exactly would you deal with, like, say, arguments or debates or something like that would start on the group? See, agreed that it's just 13 people, but still if a debate does start, and won't it be hard for people to keep in touch with it, considering like you'll have to read a lot and messages continuously keep coming? So there's a lot of things, and I think the present problem now is, I've noticed with a lot of the youngsters, is that they have a habit of not really reading everything that's been said. They'll only read the latest messages and they start reading backwards. So that's the biggest issue. The issue is not that they're reading from the top. The issue is that they start reading from the bottom. So what they're doing is they're perceiving the information that we're putting out there in a complete different manner.
Yes.
So how do you exactly control something like that?
Again, I just want to remind you, the group was very small. It's just 13, 15 people. So it's easier to control when it's a small group. I understand what you're saying. When it's a large group, because I have have other groups with large numbers of people. And yeah, you're right. People always read the bottom first. So they don't know what's happening at the top. So most times when that happens, I will, what do you call that? I would attach that. Yeah, I would attach it back and say, please read this. That's one way of doing it. Another way, if you know, a lot of these debates come on, well, generally, I think when I start a WhatsApp group, these are for, or even for other social platforms, these are for older students meaning year 2, year 3. And so, if it's a year 3 if these are year 3 students, they have already gone through classes with me. And so they already know my style of teaching. And if you happen to meet my students, they will tell you that I'm very strict in class. And so if they don't read what has been, and they ask me the question again, then I would put an emoji there with the devil's face. So they know, oh, okay, I'm in trouble, I got to read now, you know. So, you know, things like that, cheeky things like that that I do, which makes them want to read before they respond. And the fact that, you know, because I have a journalism background, and so I bring my journalism experience into the classroom, and so I tell the students, read and find out everything before you come and tell me something. You exhaust everything else, and if you cannot find a solution at all, I must be the last resort. Then I would help you out, meaning to say, I mean, I would help you, but it must be, that means they come up to me and they say, I've done this, I've read this, I've read this, I've done this, I've seen this person, I've talked to this person. It doesn't work. Then I step in and then, you know. So that's the same application I do for WhatsApp or other platforms as well. Oh, we're on a roll. Okay.
Good morning, Dr. Sharon. I'm Sujata from Osman University, Hyderabad. You belong to Malaysia. You teach in the Malaysia University, I think.
Yes.
Because when talk about government colleges and again corporate colleges, in corporate colleges in Hyderabad or in India, you find all the infrastructure well versed, well infrastructure.
Of course.
But in government colleges, it's not at all available.
Okay.
That is lacking in government colleges in India, I'm talking
Okay.
about. So then how can we reach to them when you talk about social media, social studies, social tools?
Okay.
And my second question, ma'am, relate to, do you find any technical snag while teaching in your classroom?
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Okay. The first question, I think it's one of the challenges in many countries. That is why I'm saying you use platforms which work for you best. One. Secondly, there could be universities which do not have that infrastructure. Okay? So look at what applies to your students the best. Assuming, let's assume, hypothetically, that all these technologies are not applicable in a particular university. Let's say a Z university, none at all. Then you find the next best thing. If the students are using pen and paper to do their work, so be it, pen and paper it is. Because you do not have the infrastructure. But if that is the most popular with the students, great. For instance, we have classes like in broadcasting where the students most weeks watch a movie in class because it's if I'm not mistaken, it's analysis and interpretation of film appreciation, sorry. And so, every week, if you do not have that technology in the classroom, perhaps you got to make a field trip to the cinema. Next best thing, alternatively. So, it does not mean that if you do not have that infrastructure, you cannot still be creative. Okay. There are many public universities and private universities and colleges in Malaysia. I can safely say that currently the Wi-Fi in all these universities are very good. So students generally come in and they are connected. It may be a little slow sometimes because students, you know, they are downloading something, movies and music and whatever else, but it still works. Okay, that's one. Okay, I think that answers the first part. The second part, I talk so much and I forget the question. The second part.
Madam, this is related to technical snag in your classroom.
Yes.
Do you find any technical snag while in the classroom?
Definitely, definitely. There are times I want to show them this fantastic video. I've incorporated this fantastic video into my slides and the internet is down. For some reason, router problem, you know, Malaysia's technology, fiber optics is down or something like that. Well, what can we do? We've got to just give them the link the following day or the following time and then spontaneously change the way I teach for that 1 hour or 3 hours or whatever, or have a case study on standby. It's tough being an academic today. It's very tough because we are like actors, you know, we improvise all the time. We got to think on our feet. Yes, in fact, my biggest problem is when I do Skype sessions, Skype lectures with universities in another country. And the time difference could be as big as 13 hours. So, for instance, when we did the one in Honduras, for instance, my students had to come in at 8 in the morning and their students had to come in at 8 at night. Or something like that because of that large time frame, you know. And so sometimes it doesn't work or there's some audio problem, things like that. So we have to postpone it to a day where, or a different time or something like that. We've got to work with it. But yes, there are technical issues. Thank you very much for the question.
Good morning, madam.
Morning.
It is one of the hypothetical questions.
Okay.
Technology is rapidly entering the educational institutions.
Okay.
Students are using internet, YouTube and some e-learnings, so e-books is available.
Yeah.
So my question is, do you think that in coming years, technology replace the teachers community?
I hope not. We don't want to be out of a job. Okay, in Malaysia, there are some there are some universities which have e-learning in terms of recorded learning. So what happens is, the lecturer doesn't come in, but this video is available for viewing by the student in the comforts of their own home. Normally it's for postgrad students who are working. Is it going to change? Probably not now. Probably with the emergence of alpha generation, they won't totally replace, will still be relevant, probably till retirement, but I think slowly, very slowly, it won't be so dramatic. There will be we will still see relevance of face-to-face. Face-to-face will always be existent. That's very important, you know, because that's the empathy part is existent in that situation. But otherwise, I think it wouldn't at the moment. Maybe in another 50, 70 years, perhaps. Perhaps. Thank you.
Thank you, audience, for the questions.
Thank you, Dr. Sharon, for exposing the academic community gathered here to e-learning, use of ICT tools and social media as optimal pedagogy within classroom and beyond. Thank you.
Now, I call upon Father Ludraj onto the stage and Dr. Wilson. Thank you, Dr. Wilson.
Now we have a short tea break of 15 minutes. Like yesterday, the paper presentations will happen at 3 venues. Here, classroom 16 and 17 of Xavier School of Communications, and the paper presentations which will take place here will be moderated by Mr. Ariel Sabellino, and the stream is Issues and Concern in Social Media and Communication Sector.
Students leaving the auditorium are requested to be seated so that the announcements can be finished. The paper presentations which will take place in classroom 16 will be moderated by Dr. Raj Kishore Patra, and the stream is Social Media and Society. The paper presentations which will take place in classroom 17 will be moderated by Dr. Devrat Singh, and the stream is Technology and Challenges. All other details are there in your conference proceedings.
Like yesterday, lunch will be served in the mess, and after lunch in the afternoon sessions we have Dr. T. Kumar as the moderator in the mini auditorium that is here, and the stream is Philosophies and Trends in Social Media. In classroom 16, the session will be moderated by Father Ludraj, and the stream is Social Media and Society.
In classroom 17, we have Dr. Jolie Jose who will moderate the session, and the stream is Social Media and Society. After the sessions, all of you are requested to fill the feedback forms kept inside the kit and submit those forms to the registration team who will be seated outside the auditorium. I repeat, this is a very important announcement. The valedictory function will begin at 4 p.m. All the students and the faculty members are requested to be back in this mini auditorium by 3:50.
Thank you.
All the assigned